Let's talk to the man in charge. We kind of alluded to him earlier on. With Kevin Stefanski is the new head coach, Cleveland Browns. I know you are a fan of this hire. I think he's your Twitter banner. But
Oh yeah.
you know, I'm kind of up in the air with it. What I want to know from you is what makes you very confident in him, more or less based off of his on the field resume as a coach.
Okay, so if you look at the offense that they ran in Minnesota, and the tough thing is that, especially last year, like I talked to Vikings fans or people in the media and stuff and asked them who was more responsible for the Vikings offense. Was it Kubiak or was it Stefanski? And it's always, 50-50 split. So and regardless, if you look at their personnel, if you look at what they were able to do on the field, their pieces, the ammunition that they had, it's very similar to Cleveland's as far as the pieces go. Very run heavy, which would be awesome for us. And again, they did make the quarterback look good. So whether you think he's good or not, they might have made him look a little better than he was. But when I looked at that compared to everyone else's resume, I said, okay, I think this guy would fit the best. The offense that he runs would fit the best with the pieces that he has. So it's all about utilizing that. And I read this article where they went in depth on his strategy. And one of the things that he likes to set a goal like at the very beginning and say, okay, this is what we're really good at. So everything else, every other play, every other design is following this one thing that we're really good at. And I think just breaking it down to something so simple. I think one of the things Freddie struggled with last year was after the first 10, 15 plays or whatever, and then he went and did his own thing, was that he always tried to overthink everyone. He always tried to get real cute. And it never worked. It was never going to work because, no offense to Freddie, but Freddie Kitchens was not the smartest guy in the room ever. Probably, in any room. He just wasn't. So these things, if you just make it as simple as possible, look at your offense, see what works, and let everything go after that. So when I read that, I was like, this makes a whole lot of sense. And that sort of sold me on Kevin Stefanski as a whole. And from the beginning, he was my number one guy because of that.
I think he brings a lot of common sense, hopefully, to the position.
Yeah.
And then one of the things that drove me crazy about Freddie Kitchens, because I feel like Freddie was really put in a bad spot here with the Todd Monken hire. I get what they were trying to do there. I get what Dorsey was trying to do, but I think he ultimately kind of created a disaster when he did that, because it was just two offenses that are both vertical, yes, but they're vertical in very different ways. In the Monken air raid and in kind of the Bruce Arians style that Freddie Kitchens has learned, and it was just creating a disaster before it even started. And then Freddie Kitchens, the main thing about Freddie Kitchens that drove me crazy, his play call management, his play calling, all that, yeah, that's there. That can drive you crazy about Freddie Kitchens. I don't doubt that. But the thing that drove me crazy was it's when you have this much talent as the Browns had, you don't have to be as complicated as they attempted to be. They were trying to do things that you would expect the 0-16 Browns to do because they're running out, whoever. They're running me out there as wide receiver.
6.5 hours later.
That's it. That's the thing that, again, I'm with you. You had Odell Beckham Jr. and in 16 games, you never figured out how to use him.
It's not hard. It's not hard. This is the thing. People were making this can the Browns figure it out how to play with Odell Beckham? He's the
2,000 years later.
Because it's stupid.
Yeah,
that's why, Freddie. People don't do. The only person you're out thinking and hurting is yourself and your team and your job. That's all it was.
He consistently outcoached himself, and
yes.
This season.
It's surprised we kept our sanity. And another thing last year that drove me nuts was these players Higgins and Njoku. They'd get hurt and then they'd come back And it was like, okay, like, we're ready to go, coach. Put me in. And then Freddie would be like, well, I don't know. You're going to have to ask them if they're going to play. And then you just sit them and you wouldn't put them that, other than, him being stupid on the field, that drove me the most crazy of anything. Because I'm like, you have these assets. Why are you not using them?
Yeah. That's another thing that I could hit on with Freddie Kitchens is just like the weird injuries and just the weird things. I have never seen so many weird things happen in the middle of the week. And, I think Jarvis kind of alluded to it in an interview where he was saying, like, we were practicing way too hard in the middle of the week. We were doing way too much in the middle of the week that most other NFL teams don't do. And I know a lot of people hear that like, oh, Jarvis is complaining for working hard. No, he's a veteran in the NFL. He knows what the workload should look like and what workload starts to become counterproductive. And it's like you had like, it's not just like it's the Denzel Ward and Greedy Williams both getting injured with the same exact injury on the same day and both coming back in the same time.
Yeah.
How did they hurt each other? Did they hurt each other? Did they have like a Siamese moment where they just broke their legs at the same? Like it made no sense, and there was never any clarity about that. And then, like, to make matters worse, you had the whole Demarius Randall saga of this season where he cussed out Greg Williams for whatever reason that he felt was necessary. And then the next day, he's in concussion protocol.
Yeah. This season was so weird that I honestly just forgot about that until right now.
That.
Yeah, like they just and they were there, they were ready to go. They're like, I'm ready, put me in. And then Freddie would just drag his feet about it and never really answer or respond to why these guys weren't playing. But conspiracy theory. Uh-oh. So, when I talk about put on your tinfoil hats, guys. When I talk about the power struggle that has been there since like 2000, at least 2014, 2015, with Podesta and Dorsey and Hugh and Sashi, and like it's existed for a long time. So this season, I have a theory that John Dorsey was sort of calling the shots on who was going to play. And as far as those two go, they weren't his guys. Those were Sashi's guys. So I'm like, okay, John Dorsey, I see you. I see what you're doing, and I don't like it.
Let's talk about some of the signs that he's shown since kind of like, I think one of the things people forget, right? They'll talk about the bad season that Baker Mayfield had. Mm-hmm. And it's like the dude broke the rookie touchdown record in 14 starts. And he could have like obliterated it if he wanted it to, like if he played those two games. And also, I have never seen somebody, and it happens with him and Lamar Jackson specifically. I see it with those two because for two different reasons, they're very polarizing to some people. But I feel like all that kind of clouds the kind of actual analysis of Baker Mayfield and actually trying to figure out what he is. And if I do have to say something negative about Baker Mayfield that I am concerned about on his level, not on his level of play, I think Baker Mayfield is going to be a franchise quarterback for the Cleveland Browns for the next 10 to 15 years. I think that book is written. My issue about the Baker Mayfield story is that I have real legitimate concerns about him in clutch fourth quarter situations, because if you dive back into his history at Oklahoma in some of the big games, some of the biggest moments of his big games, he has a iffy history of delivering. And I think that's an analysis that probably should be brought up more and talked about more, because it's like he has had those struggles. Like he had the game in Buffalo where he finally came through, but he had the miss. He didn't go with the read to Odell in Denver. He had the interception. He has thrown a lot of game-ending interceptions. I think he threw one in Pittsburgh on the final drive. He also threw one at the end of his rookie year against Baltimore, the end of game to CJ Mosley.
I remember that.
Yeah, and it's like these are things that, like, I feel like because I have to fight for Baker Mayfield as the starting quarterback of the Cleveland Browns so much, I feel like these are the kind of things that don't get talked about Baker, because you have to be positive about him so much because there's so much negativity about him. But I think there's legitimate criticisms of Baker Mayfield that can be made. I think those criticisms are within the realm of he's a starting quarterback in the NFL. But and there are things to have. So what I want to know from you is like, what really excites you about Baker Mayfield, and then what things do actually concern you about him? Because it's not going to be all positive, even if you have like Tom Brady.
Yeah. One of the things I've always been concerned about with him is not his ability to be a leader, but just his ability to grow and evolve and mature. Because that's, to me, that's very important. You know, we talk about leadership and how I like those, like, calm. I always feel most comfortable in any setting with like a calm, smart leader. And I think that's the kind of leadership that most people would respect. And as a quarterback, especially, you know, in Cleveland, where historically we're terrible, and we're really asking him to do a lot and step up in a lot of ways. And I just hope that he can develop that maturity to sort of cut out, just block out all the noise, block out all the things that aren't necessary to your growth. That's my biggest concern with him. As far as, you know, his play, the interceptions last year were a lot more than I ever anticipated. I didn't think that that would even be a possibility with him. But again, I don't think it's fair to judge him on last year fully, because as we talked about, they didn't have a plan. So how can you look at the guy that's supposed to be running the ship and leading, when there was never anything like set in stone? There was never a game plan going into anything. So you throw him out there with maybe 10 plays that were actually planned, and then you're asking him to do all this off the wall crap that's just like, I don't know any quarterbacks that would have been good in this Freddie Kitchens system, if we want to call it that. So, I think this year is going to be very important for him specifically, but I think, they got the right guys in there to sort of maximize his potential. And I think Baker Mayfield's going to have a really big year.